Hello, welcome back to the workshop. So I've just spent ages over the last couple of days cleaning out this little used corner of the workshop. And the reason it's little used is because it's full of all my woodworking equipment, which being a blacksmith I don't get to play with very often. So the reason for clearing all this out and the reason all this wood is stacked up here is I have a job to do. I'm going to turn these crappy old bits of beds into two pairs of cupboard doors. And why have I taken on such a daft job? Well, because my mum asked me to. So there you go. Can't say no, really. So first thing to do is to dismantle the remaining bits of the beds and see what we got. Okay, so here's the plan. If this is a cupboard door, the bits of bed sides, the sides of the beds that I've denailed and whatnot at the moment, are going to be this bit, this bit, this bit, this bit. And I'm going to make some kind of actual woodwork joint. There's a better name than that. To fit these bits together. And then these bits here, so this infill will be the T&G panelling that I've got left over, because these sections here are about 20mm thickness, or more or less 3/4. These bits here are more like 8, so what's that, just over 1/4 inch. So I'm going to cut these down in width first to just under 3 inches. So I'm going to run them through the table saw. Then I've got to cut slots in, so there'll be slots inside there in the back for this T&G to sit in. Clear as mud? Let's do it. Okay, so I've got 8 small pieces, top and bottoms, and I've got 6 good bits here, but these 2 bits, I've got the sort of ledge bit that the slats, so that would have gone like that, and the slats of the bed would have sat on this particular bed. So I've got to try and get this bit off, which is going to take some ingenuity. So it's glued. It's also screwed, and then it's got these staples in it. I think these are staples which must pin it. So if it wasn't for the staples, I'd be inclined to just run it through the saw and saw this bit off. But yeah, I've knackered the blade enough for today, I think. So what I'm hoping is that I can isolate the staple and yank it out. Well, that worked easy. Okay, so that's all the bits of metal out of the way. Now the reason I want to saw off the rest of this rather than try and chisel it off, for instance, is because it's glued, and the glue is going to be on there so well that if I chisel it, it's liable to just tear out from this section and get messy. Okay, so the next thing to do, now these are all cut to width and they're cut to length. I've got to cut a rebate, I think that's the word. Remember, I'm a blacksmith, not a chippy. So I've got to cut something like that into it. That's probably invisible to you. So there and there. So that's what's come out, so I'm quite happy with that. Yeah, not a bad substitute for having a proper kit, which would be a router, I think, would be how people would normally do that sort of thing. Imagine trying to do that by hand. It'd just be miserable. That's not what it's about. Lots of lovely shavings came out as well, which means the saw's working properly. I've got a nice sharp blade. And keep these. I think my mum will probably want these as well. She stuffs teddy bears with them. I don't know. If not, I think the chickens will enjoy it. It smells really nice too. These little block planes are super useful. Get you out of all sorts of fixes, like when you've made a door too big and you can tickle it into shape with this. Right, that's those all cleaned up. So I thought about it for a bit, and this is what I'm going to try and do. I'm going to try and go with a proper tenon join. So what this is something I made up to help me make the shutters in the barn, which was about a year ago, and I can barely remember how I actually used it. All it is some chipboard, right angle triangular chipboard, and another block of chipboard, and it's just screwed together. What it does is it means that these rails will stay perfectly upright, or as near perfect as I can get them. I've set this here to give a 6mm gap here between this bit of wood and the blade, and so I put 2 bits of wood in and I've clamped them so that they're upright against this bit here, which is square, and obviously square there as well. So the idea is that I push them against this bit of wood, which is my guide, run them through like that, and that way there'll be a slot cut leaving 6mm of wood on this side. Does that make sense? I doubt it. It barely makes sense to me, and I've come up with the idea. But if this works, it means that I'll actually have a proper through joint. The other way to go would be to put 2 halving joints, but that seems to me quite weak unless I pin it or put dowel in it or whatever. So yeah, well, let's give it a try, shall we? I've cut that slot there so far. So what I'm going to do now is turn these bits of wood around and cut a slot the other side. Look at that. That's actually fairly convincing. Yeah, I'll take that. So all of these are now done with their, well, I suppose it is still a mortise even though I've cut it with a saw. So now I have to make the tenon, which will go into it going crossways like that. So rather than use the table saw again, I'm going to try and use the chop saw for this. So what my plan is to use a stop on the saw so that the blade can't come all the way down. Now I've got a sliding chop saw which is quite useful for this sort of thing. So if I did if a normal chop saw came down, it would make a curved cut if you didn't go all the way down because of where the blade's locked into. But on this saw, because it's sliding, I can come out, and if I make the blade stop at a certain depth, it'll come down and I'll run across and I'll have a nice straight cut at the depth that I want in here. So my plan is to set this so it comes and it cuts into this piece of wood by 7mm. And I'll measure where I want it to be across here, and I'll make a few cuts across there, and then I think I'll take it out with the chisel. And I think that's probably the easiest way of doing this and getting everything nice and clean. As usual, I'm completely making this up as I go along. And what I'll do is use one of the long pieces that I've cut the mortise into as a guide, so that will tell me where I want the blade to be, and then I can set the stop accordingly. There they all are. So I've attacked all of them with the saw, and now onto the workbench and tidy them up with the chisels. Start seeing how it might come together. Right, it's the following day and they've glued up quite nicely. They're all square, they haven't warped, so that's all good. They're starting to look a bit more like cupboard doors. It's sanding next. First two are sanded up now to 80 grit and looking pretty nice. So I've had a bit of a change of plan. So I was wondering what it was going to be like, whether it flexed too much when I put the infill panels in, being that the doors are so tall. It doesn't actually flex much. Once it was all glued together, the frame is quite stiff, which is great. But when I cut the T&G, so this is, I've got a pack of this stuff. So when I cut a section and it sits in there into the milled out slots, I've got this much waste from the initial length, which is over just over 2 meters. So if I cut it like that and use these, I've got two issues. One is that this is going to be wibbly in the middle of this bit of the infill panel. More pressingly, I'm going to run out of wood because there's been this much wastage over each time I cut it off. I lose this much. So that's not going to work out. That seems dreadfully inefficient. So what I've decided to do is to put a crossbar in there. I'm going to put this 2/3 of the way up from the bottom of the door. So what that means is, instead of at my initial 2 and a bit metre length of this stuff only being able to use this much, I'll be able to have almost no wastage because it will divide up much better into that length. Hopefully that'll be a bit clearer when I actually do it. So the task now is to make some cross pieces. Now I used up all the bits of wood of the right size and then some to make the actual surround. The closest I've got is, I think this used to be the headboard of one of the beds, and this is just about thick enough to do it. So I'm going to rip this down into 70mm wide pieces like this, off cut, and then I'm going to mill in these bits again, the same as I did last time using the table saw to make these recesses. And so each door then will have a little panel, a little cross piece coming across there, and all will be well, and I should be able to use so if I do that, I can use this pack here and a couple of leftover bits that I've got, and that will provide enough TNG to infill all the cupboards. Not at all. And that's the amount of wastage I get from each piece of the TNG, which I'm well chuffed with. That's like less than 10mm. Right, let's see if it fits. Lovely jubbly. I've allowed a tiny gap around it because it might swell up. I think this wood is bone dry, so it might take on a bit of moisture and get a little bit bigger. Right, so that's all the TNG cut to length and ripped to size on these little strips, and I've managed to do it all from what I had lying around, which I'm really chuffed with. That's great. It's not even that I've saved much money because this stuff is really cheap. It's just I don't know, it just feels like it's nice to complete the challenge of trying to make everything out of stuff that just happens to be lying around, kind of like I did with a power hammer and yeah, most of the other things I make. Right, so sanding next, and yeah, sanding's I'm going to sand these as well. These are actually sold as ready to paint, but because they've been planed, they've planed with a rotary blade, there's slight chatter marks in them, which I doubt very much are going to pick up on camera, but they're visible, and when you come to paint it, they become quite a lot more visible. So it's just a case of just a quick run over with a sander, and it just evens it out, and then when you catch the light with it, it looks much more uniform. Of course, it does mean more sanding, but well, at least I have a sanding machine, I suppose. It's not too tedious. It is tedious. So there's a few defects like here, may or may not show up. There we go, job done. I'm actually really pleased with how they came out after without worrying about it. I mean, you know, turns out woodwork's not that hard after all. So that's that. That's how to turn 2 broken bunk beds into 4 cupboards. Well, 2 broken bunk beds and a bit of leftover T&G. That one's for you, Mum. Hope you like it. Thanks for watching.